Starting with ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da da da. And he's not afraid.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Superhero Rewind Unscripted. It is our impromptu history of superhero movies. It's part 9. We are into 2017 now. I think we've said enough of our piece about 2016, Austin, where we can go ahead and finally move on. We've been tracking for about a year of video, getting into the more modern stuff and stuff in recent memory. Austin, this whole thing is really surreal to me because we've now gotten to a place where it no longer feels like history and it now feels like news just a few days ago.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I just mean that's what it feels like for me.
7 years away from 2017 now.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like that in my brain, and I remember talking about all of these things, not just when they came out, but like talking about the announcement of all of them, making videos on, oh, they decided to make that Wolverine movie called Logan. That's interesting. Like I remember doing a video on like the trailer of the first Guardians movie. Like none of this stuff feels that long ago to me. And some of
that discussion of what the first Spider-Man reboot would look like.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're into a third one, or now we're basically past the third one, about to soft reboot into a fourth one. Kind of. Hayden Spring says he got his license in 2017. Yeah, that makes me feel old. Thanks, man. Hayden Spring also says part 37. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how many of these we end up doing. Like I said, originally, I was kind of hoping to be done
when you thought we
10.
would be done by 10.
Yeah.
So
that's not going to happen
to catch up with,
unless we just really gloss over a lot of stuff in
At
here.
a certain point, it's like, okay, like I don't know if you had this thought, but like there's got to be like a cutoff point. Like we can't hit modern day because then it's like, well, this movie happened, but we don't know how it affected anything.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, and I feel like we're kind of already breaking the kind of cardinal rule of, say again.
Said breaking the conditioning.
I don't know what that means.
Anyways, go on.
What does that mean?
I'm sorry, I've been an interrupter.
Okay. Anyway, but I feel like we're kind of breaking the cardinal rule of like history study, which is, you don't want to talk about anything too recently because you don't have a good enough sense of its impact. And in like broader history, when we're talking about like, political history or like history of a particular country or whatever, I remember having professors in college that would say like, I don't really like to discuss anything that's newer than like 25 years ago. And superhero movie history being such a like recent phenomenon in and of itself, you got to go back at least 5 or 10 years. But
well, at least 2. That's what I've learned from Superhero Rewind.
Yeah, exactly. But that show was at least like analyzing a story and not just talking about the history of a thing. So anyway, just keeping all of that in mind, because we're starting to get closer and closer to news.
Mhm.
But yeah, it is crazy to think that this is all 7-8 years ago, the period we're in right now.
Yeah, because I mean, maybe we will be done at 10 if we're able to knock out 17 and 18, which we won't be able to this video. But if we are,
There's so much in 17.
and there's so little from 19 to now.
Yeah.
But then also, like I said, like I don't know if there's like a cutoff point where it's like, okay, even like a year or two ago.
Well, and I think maybe we can kind of just gloss over that period and not talk too much about it. Just be like, okay, this is recent stuff, but like we'll hit the big things just to remind everybody where we are, because we had also talked about maybe capping off with a where do we think it's all going video. And so, to stop right at COVID and then be like, let's sort of do a speculation cast would be odd. So anyway, I like how all of these videos we just open planning what the videos are going to be.
Yeah, and we never talk about it off camera either.
No, we've hardly ever had a conversation about this series off camera. We do it all right here in front of you, folks. We're like a Japanese steakhouse. We do it right in front of you.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say we're Japanese and we serve steak.
God, just catch up, Austin. Just get with me at some point. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the clock. We're going to get into 17. So, Austin, a bunch of things came out this year. Why don't we hit the big two first and then see if we can think of like anything outside of that?
So now I'm wondering what the big two are.
No,
do you mean just Marvel and DC?
I just mean Marvel and DC. Yeah.
I thought you meant like there's like two big movies. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So go ahead and lay out the MCU and the DC stuff.
So the MCU we have Guardians 2, Homecoming, Ragnarok, and then DC we have Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad. Or not Suicide Squad, Justice League. Sorry.
That was the previous year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was previous year.
And of course, Justice League is massively significant because that's the first movie of a property like that well known and that's like setting such a new precedent for finally bringing stuff together that we've never seen on the big screen before to totally tank. Like you've never seen anything tank like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, it was huge.
It was huge in the way it wasn't huge. Yeah.
Do you remember not Unite the Seven? Because we talked about that last time.
We talked about that last
time. Seven for the Seven?
No.
There was a movement when Suicide Squad came out that was like, we need to support our heroes or else they'll go away and we'll lose the Snyderverse. So you need to go out and see Justice League 7 times.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize people did that.
Yeah, there was like, I don't know if it was like a petition or just like, it was like a thing I kept hearing back then.
Man, that's so desperate. It's like, why do you... I don't know. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about this, but it's like, why did the whole thing have to turn into? And we haven't gotten very far away from this, right? Like supporting a thing as opposed to just choosing to watch what you want to watch based on quality. It's like picking teams. I'll never understand that.
But I guarantee everyone that said 7 for the 7 also say that movie's trash, and we're very hardcore like Snyderverse, like. Or Snyder Cut.
Snyder Cut, yeah. But they never thought they'd see it. That was pragmatism, right? That was those folks going, well, like, we don't like this movie, but Snyder's not going to get to make any more things if we don't support it. Like, I'm sure that's what it was. And, like, from their perspective, if they thought the other two Snyder movies were great and that he got sidelined and it was unfair, like, you can sort of understand. I don't get it. Mm-hmm. But it's just if that's your point of view... And then, you think that, like, everything was out of his hands because of his family issues that made it so that he couldn't finish that movie. And then Joss Whedon ruined it for them. I mean, you can kind of see... I don't see petitions and trying to get people to go see it 7 times.
Yeah, no, that whole thing was always very silly. But they have their first win before that with Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Which you hate, but that's really the only movie in that universe that has had any kind of staying power. And then besides the Suicide Squad. But I mean, like, at that point, like, because the original Suicide Squad made money, but people turned on it very quickly, and they clearly lost a lot of money with merchandising.
I don't know. That was like a really like hardcore normie movie. Where like I remember in 2016 hearing, everyone in our kind of circles being like that movie's trash,
Yeah.
and a lot of regular people being like, "Oh, I love this movie. It's great."
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I actually think it probably did really well in merchandise.
I don't know, man. That's one of those things where, and this is just anecdotal, but that's one of those things where I saw stuff stay on shelves for months and months.
Well, yeah, and I just remember like all the Harley costumes, like
Yeah, you
that
had,
was
yeah, you
where it
had
went
those
huge.
pieces of it that people really
You had
latched
like all
onto.
the little girls walking around with the daddy's little monster shirts, which was just
That
creepy.
was very uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
See, how is
But
this
that was
quote
last
unquote
year.
history now? This all. Yeah, I guess we didn't talk a lot about Suicide Squad, but
That's because that movie's trash.
well, we're gonna get to more things like that. We're also gonna get to popular movies that I think are, if not trash, very not great.
Yeah, there's some of that in this video for me.
Yep, for me as well. By the way, thanks for watching. If you're watching live, appreciate you guys watching after the fact as well. Chewbacca's Lover put in a $5 super chat. I'll read that real quick. He says, I remember you saying if the Batman movie ever comes out, it's going to be a pain to Google that TV show. This was back when Affleck was attached. Wow, I forgot I said that.
Well, joke's on you, Cap, because no one's Googling that show anyways.
Well, that's true, but if I need to Google it.
That's true.
Look, I'm very
You gotta
selfish about this
Yahoo
stuff,
it.
okay? Like, when it comes to superhero movies, I just care about me being able to find things for work, okay? That's all that really matters. But yeah, remember when that, I mean, that's the thing we haven't really discussed, like, and we haven't gotten to the Batman yet, but that whole thing is already being discussed at the point where we are in the history that Ben Affleck is supposed to be making his Batman movie, and I remember it being like a prequel period piece thing.
Well, yeah, his movie, I have no idea what that movie was supposed to be. I've heard like 8,000 different, like this, oh, his movie would have been this. I think it like fluctuated and like became a prequel thing later.
So you don't think it started that way?
This is the Live by Night period, though. I don't know if you remember that, where he was putting out his movie Live by Night, and he was doing the press junket for it, and every single interview, Batman, when's Batman coming?
Yeah.
You can see him like degrade through the tour, and like you can see the like, okay, I need to walk away from this, kind of entering his brain during that period.
Just that he wasn't happy with how the project was going.
No, there's one where he like straight up is like, yeah, like whatever, Batman. Like I made this movie.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
like you guys want to talk about this movie that I made? And then that movie didn't do very well critically and financially.
But I thought that they were behind the scenes, like developing story for that at the same time. So that's why I wondered if that had anything to do with his kind of deflating.
That was when he was writing the script.
That's what I mean. But like that might have had something to do with why he was deflating while people were talking about it. Where like behind the scenes, maybe it already wasn't going well.
Well, that is possible too. But I've just always seen it as like, this isn't like his big passion project. Like it's a thing he's doing, but like there's other things that he wants to do, and he was just hounded constantly about it.
Yeah, you also got to expect that with that with that property. Like he
was also going through a rough time too, as well.
All at the same time.
But should we start chronologically through the year, or how do you want to start with that? Because I think we start with Logan in 2017.
Yeah, which was a real good start for that year. And that's a movie that I think like really surprised people in being kind of a like split off thing from a very odd franchise. Like when you look at the Wolverine movies, like you don't have anything like a true trilogy. None of them talk to each other at all, but two of them are made by the same director. It's so strange. You can't tell if the Wolverine really fits in any continuity at all. But it's a rare breed in that nobody ended up caring about that because they were moved by the story and they thought it was a really good send off for that actor. That was new. That had never happened before. Where you have basically, and I realize he's coming back now with Deadpool, but at the time it felt like this kind of like. I probably made this point before, but it felt like a decades later sequel for a character that had always been there, that like had not left.
Which is a big part of why Logan didn't work for me at all when I first saw it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's not to say Logan's a bad movie, because it's not. Like it is a very well made movie. But like I'm at that point where I'm like, I need him to go away. Like I hate this character. I don't want to see him anymore. I want just more of what I had with First Class that you immediately took away from me.
Right.
And here's Jackman's big send off that a lot of it relies on me being nostalgic and loving that character, and I don't. And I'm like, I need him to go away. So like I have no emotional attachment to any of that. I was like laughing in the theater when he died because it didn't play at all for me. It's it's fine. Like the movie itself is well made, but like I see that movie in a lot of ways that I think people who weren't into Endgame saw that movie.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I hadn't considered it like that because, but you're right. Like that is maybe part of the start of the sort of nostalgia bait. Like decades later, going back to franchises people used to be obsessed with and doing things you didn't expect to see again. Like we did it with Days of Future Past.
Yeah, and I mean, I also, prefer my comic book movies like to be more comic booky too. So like that kind of distillation of it in Logan, where it's got like kind of Dark Knight thing, where it's like, no, we made like a real movie.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
And like, I don't know, some of that just kind of rubs me the wrong way too.
But just stepping back for a minute and just talking about like how people accepted that movie. Like I think I think a lot of quote unquote like regular moviegoers were kind of starved for that Nolan thing again though. And I think that's part of why that movie appealed to people as much as it did. Is that you're right? Like I could see people in our circles feeling like there was a pretension to it, maybe where it's like, oh, this is a real movie. Don't worry, it's not too comic booky. But it had with MCU especially, things had gone in so much. I'm hesitating because I'm saying like for regular moviegoers it had gone in so much more of like a lighthearted comic booky way. A lot of actual diehard comic book fans felt like it wasn't for them anymore. That's the irony of it, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because I mentioned the Suicide Squad thing, the first one, where it was uh, complete disdain from like our circles, and then normies loved it. It's not so much like a reverse of that I had in my personal life, but it was very much a in our circles everybody was glowing and like this movie's perfect and like should be best picture at the Oscars, and most normal people I talked to like either didn't care enough to watch it or watched it and they were like, oh, it was pretty good. So like I always thought that was really interesting. And that's not like this is my feelings, so like I'm projecting it onto other people.
Yeah.
Like that is a lot of what I saw when I talked to people.
And
I knew people that refused to go see it because they knew he would die in it.
And I can't speak to that. I don't think I talked to a lot of people outside of our circles that even watched that movie, but it did perform really well. And so the sense I got was just by and large,
well, and it was also like sorry, go ahead.
A regular audience and like superhero movie fans kind of came together with that, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think it and Deadpool are like the double beat of hey, we can do like mainstream R-rated superhero movies. We shouldn't be afraid of that.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like I was kind of more excited. I mean, I like that movie a lot, but the thing that most excited me about it was hoping that Hollywood would take the right cues from it. I and we very often don't, and so maybe it's kind of naive thinking, but like we got Joker out of it, however you feel about that, and that's about it, right? Like we haven't really done a lot more of those standalone, like more adult, more like serious, like quote unquote grounded or at least story driven kinds of superhero movies since then. And I was hoping we would get more of that. I was also hoping that director would make more of them himself.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what I hope.
And I thought Indiana
Swamp
Jones had a
Thing is.
chance at being that, and apparently wasn't. I didn't see it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not. No, that's what I hope Swamp Thing is. It's like I said, like that movie is well made. Like it is good. It's just I don't care. But uh, if Venom, I feel like if that was like slightly later, I feel like it would have been more influenced on that. We probably would have had an R-rated Venom.
Sony is insanely unpredictable. There's no telling.
That's true. That is true too.
There's no tell. You still got Avi Arad there, so like, no, probably not. Like, he's not going to learn the right lessons from Logan.
That is true.
No, they absolutely should have been looking at that movie.
Greg Goat is complaining that I'm bragging about ruining other people's experience. Like I was laughing to myself. I wasn't like Rich Evans laughing in the theater. I was also in an empty theater when I saw Logan, but.
How much do you think people now are going back to that movie? Because that felt like it could have been one of those, kind of timeless. Because it's easy to watch in a vacuum, and because people were moved by it. And by the way, I'll just tack on real quick because I meant to make this point earlier that I mean, and not to be defensive or anything, because we can have our different feelings and disagreements about movies. I was very moved by that movie. I don't know for me how much of it was nostalgia for Wolverine. Certainly there was some X-Men nostalgia, related to that.
Well, I guess
it was kind of
less nostalgia and more like you've lived with this character and like you've kind of watched him grow. And like that's a big part of it.
What I'm trying to say is, I don't think that had anything to do with it for me.
Fair enough.
What I'm trying to say, like, I think there was some of that with like Professor X and Patrick Stewart, certainly. Because I felt like we got to see a side of that character that was desperately missing before. But with Logan, it was more just I thought it was a good kind of character story in a vacuum. In some ways, I didn't feel like I was even looking at the same character. I felt like they finally found him. Like that's more of what I wished he had been earlier.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really
the actual character.
So I guess it was about living with that character in the sense that I kept waiting for them to make that movie, and they finally made it. Like that's what it was for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the character work of like the kind of main trio in that movie is really good.
Yeah, and that's what I latched onto. In the same way that the big thing I latched onto with Days of Future Past was the Xavier arc.
Yeah, sure.
And that just kind of spoke to me on a personal level. But
yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's weird. Logan almost, because I feel like the influence isn't what you would expect. Like I see more influence on how we get things like Endgame and stuff like that. And how we handle Iron Man and whatnot, as opposed to like I said, we got Joker with the R-rated movie thing. But
yeah, I never even thought about a correlation between how his death is handled and Tony Stark and Endgame. That's interesting. You're probably not wrong. I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's always how I've seen it. Like that's just kind of it sets a template, and we can kind of go back to that.
Yeah, I struggle to tell where any influence has really been after that with that movie, which is surprising because I would have expected to see a lot of it right after, like just like with the Nolan films and stuff. But some of it is like house styles and like franchises that are already, you know, very much in the midst of whatever they're doing, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
So like DC is sitting there floundering somewhere between let's be completely humorless and our characters aren't even allowed to make jokes, and we've got to try to look exactly like the MCU to compete with the MCU. So they're far removed from paying attention to anything other than the MCU right then. And then Marvel kind of has their house style.
Mhm.
And like Fox X-Men is sitting there trying to decide what it's going to do with itself moving forward just before they get bought out.
Well,
And
and they're
so
also
I
trying to do
I
like the
do
MCU thing in the last two movies, so
yeah,
it's
and they're trying to create like a shared universe in trying to make different kinds of movies for different people too. So like the one of the only big things, and this is so odd that comes out of Logan, I guess maybe is New Mutants, because they're like, well, let's do another this kind of connects, but it doesn't really matter that it connects, a kind of movie, and for, you know, older audiences,
yeah,
and
and
a
to do
rated R
like
kind of horror thing, like
yeah, you have like a
pick another.
Western thing with Logan, and then you do like a horror thing with that.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
it's all X-Men, but we're picking different. Yeah, and I and like whatever subgenre you want to call Deadpool with the kind of humor that's doing, like they're all at that point kind
Yeah,
of different genres.
mhm. Yeah, it's funny because all the spin-offs are doing more specific things, and then the last two actual X-Men movies are just gray, muddled, uh, MCU-y. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, they're not even ripping off the more distinct style that the X-Men movies had toward the beginning. They're not even really being X-Men.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And
We
and
got
I
a new
got
super chat. I don't know if you want to go into
I'll
that
read that in
or
just a second, but I just wanted to
yeah.
say I was very excited when the trailer for New Mutants originally came out, you know, 4 years before we actually saw the movie.
Mhm.
I and I might be exaggerating, but it felt like 4 years. And it was just really cool to see them like trying different stuff and taking those kinds of risks. And like I said, I felt like that was uh, maybe going to be the start of something that Logan was setting the template for. And then for lots and lots of reasons, that just didn't really happen.
Well, and I mean, it also helps that they've fizzled out and been bought within 2 years of
Yeah,
Logan.
yeah, and I do think that Logan led to announcements for things that didn't happen. Like we almost got a Doctor Doom movie that I can't remember if Vaughn was going to make that or what, but that sounded like a thing that would have been kind of more sophisticated and take itself seriously. You probably don't get that without Logan, but
We had a Doctor Doom
then you didn't
movie.
get it anyway. There was there was another thing too, and I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, you had a Doctor Doom movie, and then there was also a multiple man movie announced with James Franco around that time,
Oh
and
yeah, I remember
the
that
Gambit movie, of
before he
course,
got
with
me
Channing
sued.
Tatum.
Right. Yeah, but I thought there was like just before the buyout, I thought there were like two really cool, smart sounding projects.
Was one of them the Silver Surfer
That's what it
one?
was. That's what it was. Yes. And one of them was Vaughn, and I can't remember what the other one was.
It wasn't Matthew Vaughn. It's Brian K. Vaughn.
Brian
I
K.
think was
Vaughn.
doing Silver Surfer.
That's what it
Is I think what
was.
you're thinking of.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
It's weird how the
Yes.
older stuff sticks with me and the newer stuff I'm struggling with.
Well, and then Logan 2 is also the start of the Mr. Sinister teasing.
Yeah.
Or no, I guess it's
No, it's right in
technically
the middle of it.
it's Apocalypse.
Deadpool does it first, right?
No, Deadpool 2 does.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's Apocalypse starts it because Apocalypse sets that up with to go into Logan. So I think a
Yeah.
lot of people
And then
after Apocalypse thought he was going to be the villain of that movie.
that's yeah. And I think and it's kind of all about like expectations and stuff. I think some people found it kind of lame. Like even if they liked Logan, that the quote unquote villain plot was the genetic engineering thing that it was. That we didn't really get a like costumed villain. And one thing I do hear people kind of argue about with that movie and going back and forth on is the clone Logan thing. And I get why that didn't work for some people.
Yeah, like I said, I think because I think there's people in the chat that maybe think I hate Logan. Like, I think Logan is a fine movie. It's overrated. I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10. The main things that work in it are the main trio, and then everything outside of them I think is kind of lame. Like all the villain stuff is lame, which was my main worry when you got Indiana Jones, because the villain stuff in the Wolverine is also really lame. So I was like, uh-oh, like I want memorable villains in my Indiana Jones.
Sure.
I hope he breaks that in Swamp Thing, because I'm really excited for him doing that. We'll see.
Let's go ahead and read these super chats. Bob Hun, $5. He says, I was so pissed off in the theater when they changed the opening credits to include MCU stock footage instead of comic panels like the old films.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it has both, but I can understand why I'd be frustrated with that. But I think at that point, like
when did
they? It's comic flips and then it breaks out into the movie stuff.
Do they still do it like that?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like some of them are just movie things now, though.
No, like it starts as comics flipping, and then you get like the character posters, and then it does the Marvel logo where you see like the movie clips through it. The comic stuff is still how that logo starts.
I have to say, I've never paid that close of attention to it.
But like I said, I can also understand being frustrated with that.
Yeah, me too. Like I don't have super strong feelings about it, but
I feel like
I can see why you
long
would.
Enough that it's fine, especially
yeah,
it happens when that you still have Sony and Fox doing their other things. So I think it's more understandable that they differentiate it in that way.
Well, what I was going to say is where I can see both sides is they've been around long enough where they have enough material that they can show you a good variety of images and kind of make a big deal out of their own legacy, and they do too much of that buy and post Endgame, but some of that they've earned, they just take it too far. But the other,
I like more when they like kind of flip it, or not flip it, but mess with it. Like I like when they do character specific ones. Like I like the Black Panther and Guardians 3 one. Where it's just based on those franchises.
But where I was trying to get to with that is the other side of it, where I can see both sides, is if you feel like those movies don't have enough reverence for the comics they're based on anymore, and you like. That might be where he's going, because I know there's people that feel that way. That might feel like even more of a slap in the face, where it's like you don't even care about the source material anymore, so you took the comic part of that out of the like. I can kind of see why somebody would get there. I don't have that, but.
But yeah, it feels, I don't know, like I guess kind of surface level in that, like if you changed it back, like I still don't know if they really care about the source material. You know what I mean? Like it's so just kind of arbitrary.
Yeah, I think so too.
I guess more than surface level. Just it's I don't know. It's just a logo.
Dan Schneider, $10 super chat. Appreciate the support, man. Thanks. He says Logan is overrated. It's not a bad film, but it tells a story we've seen a million times. It does it well, but not brilliantly. Leon the Professional and Last of Us are two that come to mind.
Sure. And I'm also not like a giant Last of Us fan.
Yeah, and when that came out, I don't think I had seen any of the things that you might be talking about when you say that story's been done over and over again. Like, I didn't have that. It felt fresh enough to me at the time, but that was also 7 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And then his second one also like ties into that as well.
He says, my problem with Logan is that I wasn't emotionally moved by the relationship with Logan and the girl, but I was with other things that did that story. The Telltale Walking Dead was much more moving. Yeah, and again, I don't have those comparisons to make with that. And, like, I don't want to just review this movie. We're going to have to move on. But
yeah.
See, that's the other problem with doing stuff that's this much more recent is that folks are just going to want to talk about the quality of it and not so much like influence in history and the kind of comparison and contrast you can make to things.
Yeah, because like we kind of said, Logan is like this big movie, but like also it doesn't have as much relevance in terms of like the history of how it affected things as much as you would expect.
Yeah, well, that was the big thing I wanted to talk about with that is like where is the impact with that movie? I started to ask. By the way, thank you again for the super chat, Dan Schneider. And I didn't mean to just breeze past it, but I need to finish Telltale Walking Dead. I played the first chapter of that and loved it. I mean, it's excellent. I just have not been. I say first. I think I played most of the first game.
Yeah, I've heard that
maybe
first
half
one's
of
like
it.
the best of all the Telltale stuff.
It's been a while. That was the experience I was having with it. I mean, I think the storytelling is better than Batman. So yeah, I had. I mean, I guess I should have made the Last of Us comparison. But I wasn't familiar with any of that until the TV show, which I've still not finished. So that did not connect in my brain. But I did find that story personally compelling enough. But
Yeah, for sure. See, Hound Cap now instead of me. He hates that game.
I don't. I hate what game?
Walking Dead.
Oh, no, I don't. It's great. But well, what I played of it's great. I never finished it. Anyway,
Jack hates it.
but no,
Okay,
you would expect to see more impact from that movie as big as it was. And so going back to the question I started to ask earlier is, do you think people are going back to that movie? And also broadening out from that, do you think that we're so oversaturated with recent superhero movies that a lot of people have what I do now, where I just don't even think to rewatch things as much as I used to, even if I loved them in the first place?
well, I don't know if that's like an
'Cause that's a
oversaturated
phenomenon I
thing as
have.
much as it's just like a thing that naturally happens as you grow older.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, if you're like, I don't know. I guess I'll just go to you, Austin. Like, you're more than a decade younger than I am, and so I don't know if that's happened to you yet, where you don't rewatch things as much as you once did. But like, I'm middle aged. I've got kids, working and everything. Like, I don't go back to stuff as much as I used to. But when I do go back to things, it tends to be stuff that I watched a lot when I was younger, and I don't know how much of that is, like you said, getting older, and how much of it is like the quality and the saturation of the things, even things I like from later. I like, and with superhero movies in particular, and we had this conversation with the with some of the earlier episodes of this, where there was a bigger novelty, obviously, when you didn't get several of these every year, and when you didn't know how long people would even be making superhero movies. You kind of like accepted and appreciated like what you got, and I think our standards were lower because of that. So like, having any Spider-Man or Batman or Superman movie at all was a big deal. And so I do think saturation does play a part with this, where it's like, even if you love one, but there's so many more to choose from, and that you might end up going and seeing that are brand new, are you going to rewatch as often, even the stuff that you really, really loved?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I'm very like hit or miss on it. Like I used to rewatch more things that I saw like when I was a little bit younger, even like 5 years ago. But there's still things each year that that I see that I rewatch a lot. Like in terms of the genre stuff, like I've seen the Batman, Guardians 3, and the Suicide Squad a lot of times. But like there's other movies that I really like in the genre as well, or that I liked well enough. Like you and I both like Doctor Strange too. We were kind of the only, some of the only people that did. And I think I rewatched that once when it came out
Yeah,
on DVD.
same here. But
that's about it.
I'll also say that is one of the only movies, apart from doing stuff here for the channel, that I have gone back to at all in the last 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm. When John makes fun of me constantly because I saw Guardians 3 6 times last year, not in the theater, but uh, whatever. John's a hater.
Well, see, you were afraid they wouldn't make any more. And you
Exactly.
had people try to sign a petition.
Exactly. I was trying to hit 7 for the however many Guardians are in that movie, but I didn't quite live up to it.
You almost got there.
I almost got there, but I didn't. So Gunn became the head of DC instead of Marvel.
I'm going to ask that same question for Wonder Woman also. Like, that was. I don't want to say it had, like, the cultural phenomenon thing that Black Panther did, but I do feel like people were just blindsided by seeing a movie in that line that was coherent and that they could follow. That was the experience I had with it. And so I wonder, like 1984 notwithstanding, if that's a movie people go back to, or and if like they think about, and that's like a character they think of as, you know, iconic and like really matters to them at this point. I wonder. I wonder how easy it is to reboot that character now when we finally get there with Gunn. I wonder if there's anybody that's gonna be up in arms about it like they are with Cavill, or if people will be pretty much ready to move on from her. And some of that will be 84, I'm sure.
I was gonna say, I think 84 really changed hearts and minds because, like, I remember being off on an island, being like, "This woman can't act." When her first movie came out, and now whenever Wonder Woman comes up, I feel like that's all I hear. Um, and I think general audiences still really like that character, but most people didn't really like her second movie, and then she just kept showing up in, kind of crappy movies last
Yeah.
year.
Now,
So
I don't think it's the same thing as, and again, I'm not saying this to disparage your opinion at all, Austin, and we'll see if you agree with me on this. I don't think it's the same thing as Ragnarok to Love and Thunder, where, because if 1984 had been similar enough in tone to that first movie, people probably would have accepted it again. I don't think it was like, if you make that same movie again, like Love and Thunder kind of did with Ragnarok, I don't think people look at that and go, oh, okay, so this wasn't ever good, right? Like, that, the choice of direction with that was a major misstep. But her lack of acting chops came out a lot harder because the material wasn't there.
when I think the big thing, because people were really like, "Oh man, like Gal Gadot and Chris Pine have amazing chemistry," and you summed up my point on this perfectly in your Aquaman 2 spoiler cast when I listened to that,
Oh, I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
which is that I think Chris Pine has amazing chemistry and is just great, and it makes her look slightly better, and that he has chemistry with her, but she can't act, so it like raises her up a little bit, and
Well, and
then
all I could do was compare it to what I had seen already, because I thought she was awful in A Plank of Wood in BVS, and I felt like, compared to that with Wonder Woman, she kind of shined.
mhm. Yeah, and then in Wonder Woman 2, Chris Pine does not want to be in that movie. So when they're
Right.
together, like he's sunk down to her level. And he's not like an awful actor, he's just very clearly bored in that movie and was like, "Oh, I thought I was going to have a better role in this movie." Is I
Uh,
think the issue with it. And I think that's why a lot of people saw it more in the second movie than they did in the first.
yeah. Well, and again, some of that we can agree to disagree, because I think her performance in that movie is better than you think it is. I also still think that her casting was a major miscast. I think it was a big misstep.
My saddest thing with Wonder Woman is that even the like 2 other like child actresses aren't very good in that movie. So like Diana has no good actresses in that movie, and I'm like, one day we will find somebody that can do it.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But again, I just like I wonder what the legacy for some of this stuff is going to be moving forward, and I suspect that for a lot of it, and even for and I don't want to make like a blanket statement like everything past 2016 or anything, because some movies will be remembered and will be gone back to more often than others, of course. But I feel like a lot of this stuff, even some of the decent movies, will be kind of forgotten about, or at least will be in the conversation, but people won't think to actually watch them again. Like there's just so much of it, and we keep rebooting and moving on from stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, like with what you're saying, like I wonder if we'll see that maybe with something like Aquaman, where like that did really well and people really liked it, but I don't know that people really go back to it.
Yeah, and then there's China with that movie.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Because I
exactly.
still can't tell how much domestically there was actually really interest in that movie.
Well, the domestic side of it's way lower than the international.
Yeah,
Uh, Look, if I remember correctly, because I haven't looked at the numbers in a long time, but like I want to say without China, like that movie bombs, or at least
I think
maybe
so
just
too.
just
Well,
makes its money back.
and for two, it was a 70-30 split.
Yeah,
That
and I want to say like that's what around what the
I
first one
I bet it
was.
was close.
Mhm.
Chewbacca's Lover, $10 super chat. Thanks once again for the support. Appreciate you, man. He says, I remember in '06, people online acting like a million superhero movies were coming out and suggesting that too many were coming out and there might be a crash. Yeah, and I've talked about that we talked about the mid 2000s as like an onslaught of superhero movies, being naive and having no idea. Like it was a simpler time, right? Having no idea the potential for like I keep saying oversaturation, but just for a, a bunch of companies jumping on that bandwagon and making a ton of these all at once, and it becoming a big fad, but a fad that has lasted like pop figures,
Mhm.
and
In
a,
that
and
I'm
a fad
tired of
that
looking at it, but it won't die.
yeah, and also pop figures has partly lasted because of that fad.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
James Egan, 299 super chat. Thanks, man. He says, "What will be the legacy for MCU Spider-Man trilogy?" I think some
Well,
of that depends on what they do after it.
yeah.
But I also can't tell you in 10 years exactly how people that loved No Way Home are going to feel about that. But I think there is a because Austin and I both are not the biggest fans of that movie and the kind of gimmicky way that was handled, and not ever really giving Tom Holland like a great arc and do some great world building for their Spider-Man side of the universe. But I suspect that it's gonna feel kind of more gimmicky and more of a novelty that just doesn't play over and over on repeat viewings for people even that loved it.
But I feel like every Spider-Man movie, with the exception of Amazing 2, since the first Amazing, is more well liked by the general audience when it comes out, and then like a little bit after that, you hear more and more people be like, "I don't really like that." Like I hear more people talk about like, "Oh, I don't like Homecoming. It looks like a Disney Channel movie, whatever."
Yeah,
I don't like Far From Home. Uh, for like some of the kind of sillier stuff in that movie, and then I don't like No Way Home because it only worked in the theater. Like I feel like each one of those movies has kind of had like a drop in terms of how people look at it moving forward.
yeah,
Um,
and not like a rises kind of drop, but
yeah, but like maybe not like full sour, but like it was like okay or like it wasn't that great.
it's an experience. And Robert used that word. He said, "No Way Home will always be well remembered from general audiences as a good experience." I think that's right. I think it's an experience before it's like a movie you want to live with. And let's
And
face
it'll be
it,
like a big touchstone thing where like in the future when like these big movies happen, people will be like, is it like another No Way Home? In a like good theatrical experience way.
well, what I was going to say is, let's face it, like the MCU does not mind making kind of more disposable movies now,
Hmm.
where it's a lot more about the moment, because that's what Endgame was, and look how much money they made,
Hmm.
right? It's about uh like doing something that hasn't been done before right now, and never mind whether it's got any replay value. It's like a video game that's real fun the first time around, but there's not any like extra stuff to do. There's not any there's not enough side quests, or there's not like enough like varying paths through a level. Like it's got no replay value.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. But 2017 is right in the heart of me being like just watching this stuff over and over. Like we just had Civil War and Doctor Strange, which I saw a lot. Guardians 2 I watched a ton. Homecoming I've seen a lot, and then Ragnarok is like the cutoff where
Yeah.
it's like boom, and then everything after that I don't see as much.
Yeah, and is it that you were just soured to all of it because Ragnarok was such a weird experience, or is there really a quality shift after that? Because I think by and large there kind of is.
I think there is. Phase 3 is really weird. I think we've talked about this before, where I think Phase 3 is some of their best stuff, but also some of their worst. And a lot of the better stuff is like front loaded. It's almost like a phase that kind of peters out. And then, but it'll never have that reputation because people loved Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah. And I'm real split with Infinity War and Endgame because I think Infinity War, by and large, is one of their best movies, and then I think Endgame starts to get a little bit too, I don't know, in love with itself, or like in love with that last decade, where it starts to get too fan servicey, and it starts to pat itself on the back like I know I go to this too much, but like the CW superhero shows. And I was really afraid that we were going to go to that place, and Endgame finally took us there a little bit. But I don't think it completely falls apart like some of our friends and contemporaries do. Like, I still like Endgame overall, but the seams are starting to show. It's starting to show me the shark it might jump pretty soon. And then it absolutely jumps that shark like over and over and over again right after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you on Infinity War. Like that's probably my top 10 of the MCU, like on the backside of the 10.
Yeah. It's probably my favorite Avengers movie.
It is my favorite Avengers movie. And my favorite movie with Thor in it. Or like my favorite Thor just
And
how
you
we
just
portray him.
wish that he'd been characterized that way and that was his attitude through the whole thing. You just wish
Books
that
I've
we
always said you can tell in
started with
each
that.
movie that they do which character or characters that the Russos are really excited to work with.
Yeah.
And you get to Infinity War and it's 100% Thor. Like they are so excited to work with him to the point where he's often like a side thing the entire movie, and you're like, okay, this is clearly where a lot of their passion is being put into.
Well, and since we're there, I think going back to 17 for a minute, I think one of the worst things that ever happened to the MCU was not just that Ragnarok was made the way it was, but that too much of the audience accepted it. And like my apologies to people that really like that. Like I don't mean to go to war with anybody. Like what you like, but I think it was really detrimental to their movies moving forward because they went, "Oh, we don't have to take our movies seriously." And I don't mean that you can't make a thing that has more of a comedic bent. That's what Guardians was. But
Yeah, and Guardians 2 and Ragnarok are the same year, and I can break down exactly why one of them works and one of them doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And it just feels like somebody's turning in a project that they're that they're like not invested in the right way. Like we know that Watiti didn't really care about the material, didn't really care about Thor, and that shows on the screen, I think. And it feels like somebody that is given a class project that they forgive me, this is just how I see it. Like they're having as much fun as they can with it. They're turning into the thing that they like to make, but they're half-assing it in the sense that they don't actually care about the material. They don't care about the project they've been assigned, and they get an A+ anyway.
That's what I was gonna say. Is it's everything that lucked out with Iron Man again, but it all collapses. Except, like you said, they were rewarded for it. You know, because as much as we all like Iron Man is a taped together film, and
that's part of why it was so fresh and new. Like it was just lucky that it worked out that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think everything after Endgame, I think we've really seen how lucky they were in general through the first three phases,
Yeah,
and how all of this could have easily fallen apart, and they just somehow lucked out. And obviously, there's things that don't work and things that fall off. But like overall, it's like a line where you can kind of see through it. Where Phase 4 is very all over the place. Like you have everything, even behind the scenes with like Jonathan Majors and whatnot. Like you look at some of that stuff and you go like they were really lucky through that that first 10 years.
Yeah. And now just all the people that they're losing for various ways, like you said, with Jonathan Majors and with Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, and now there's talk. I mean, we're dating ourselves now, but like now there's talk that like Benedict Cumberbatch may not come back for an Avengers movie. Like moving forward, they don't even know who they've got.
Yeah, like it's just very all over the place. And I think in a lot of ways it makes me appreciate those first three phases while both being flawed. Like I appreciate how it came together in the way that it did, and that it could have been 8 billion times worse.
Well, and also you make a great point, because up to a certain point it felt like they were learning from their missteps, at least to some degree. I don't think they ever fully figured out how to like plan ahead to make their movies like all gel together and move forward in the same direction. They get a lot of praise for that, but I don't agree with some of that praise. But like other than that, I think they did learn from a lot of their mistakes.
Well, the big thing that they were good at in those first three phases was not planning things out, but being able to like pick up the baton. Where a lot of the stuff that say Civil War or Infinity War is picking up on, I don't think was planned, but like the Russos were able to pick up threads and go, okay, how can we rework this or like work this into what we're doing.
Well, and they got creative about it, and they made it about the storytelling instead of making about demographics. And I'm afraid that that's more of what we're doing now, where we go, what are the superficial aspects that people are latching onto, and that's how you wind up with something like Ragnarok. Back to your point with Ragnarok, that is way worse of a problem for people like you and me because it was popular. And then I mean, you look at the comic bent of some of the things that they do after that, and you can see the direct influence with Ragnarok. But go back to Thor: The Dark World. Like that's a boring movie. That's not the direction any of us would have wanted the rest of the MCU to go. But those of us that don't like that movie don't hate it as much as we would, if the rest of the MCU looked like that. Like if that movie had been super popular, you'd feel differently about it.
Mm-hmm. I still see people say, Dark, say what you want about Ragnarok or Love and Thunder. Dark World is still way worse. I would rather watch Dark World than either of those last two, like easily.
Yeah. Well, I can at least some of it or more of it, take seriously. Like Naked Scientist Man notwithstanding.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess Thor from the start kind of has some of those beats, but we like really, really play into it by the time we get to Ragnarok. And like I said, I think last time, Ragnarok's also just a remake of the first movie, but through a Spaceballs lens.
Yeah, and I said this 100 times, and then with all these like really tragic beats for Thor and horrible things happening in his life that the thing cannot take seriously. Bob the Hunt $10 super chat. He says Ragnarok is Suicide Squad bad, in my opinion. People saying it's merely bad or okay is because of lower standards. I think it's one of those movies where it's embarrassing it got released. I remember being in the theater feeling like it was embarrassing.
Yeah, I have that. Suicide Squad to me is way worse, but part of that is just it hit comics I like, and I'm not like a giant Thor Hulk fan, so like that's gonna hit harder for people. Like Dan, or with you reading Simonson.
Yeah, and they're bad.
I have that a bit now with Planet Hulk because we reviewed that, and that book's great.
They're bad in different ways, so it's weird.
That's the other thing. Yeah,
compare them. Like Ragnarok isn't the structural thing that Suicide Squad is, although it is paced weird. and it also looks better than that movie. Like, say whatever you want to about Ragnarok, it's one of the better looking movies in that phase. Like,
In places, a lot of that movie I
it's
think
maybe a
looks
little
like it's
inconsistent.
yeah, I think a lot of that movie looks like it's on blue screens. Like we're like really obvious, but then there's
But
also
there's also
places
at
where it
least some
looks really
creative
great.
design stuff.
Yeah, and
Like,
you get like the big Kirby statues and stuff like that. Like that's something.
yeah.
Yeah, no, they're bad in a lot of different ways. Um, what was I going to say about Ragnarok as well?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Well, and the other thing too is Ragnarok is X-Men 3, where like you take two stories that don't gel together and you shoved them in and made one movie out of it.
Well, the difference is people that saw X-Men 3 that had no idea that that's what it did could still feel that. Right? Like you're
Yeah.
something about this plot is amiss, and people having no idea what two things they were sandwiching together with Ragnarok that really liked that movie were not feeling that about it for whatever reason. And I think a lot of it is, and I'm trying not to act superior or whatever with this, but I think it's just a superficial thing of I was entertained by it, it was funny, and
I guess I'll play devil's advocate and
yeah.
say,
But I heard that a lot from people, where like
no, and that's certainly
any
part of it.
criticism I would throw at it, they would go, "But Cap, I was laughing, and
Mm.
you weren't laughing, and comedy is subjective." And I'm like, yes, comedy is subjective, but the whole thing also isn't just a farce. It's predicated on some very serious events.
Mhm. No, exactly.
And people who just aren't any good at improv. Like, that's the difference between that and Iron Man. Is like part of the reason Favreau went as patchwork as he did was because he had a guy who was coming up with better dialogue than they had written down. That is an understandable reason to go the improv direction.
Mhm.
Ragnarok
No, exactly.
was, we don't want to write anything down. I mean, Ragnarok was made way too much like Ghostbusters 2016 to be so much more successful than Ghostbusters 2016.
Mhm. So I'm gonna play devil's advocate on the plot thing. Though I agree, a lot of it is just it made me laugh, so it's fine. But I think the reason why you don't hear as many people talk about that is because X-Men 3 is like you have this plot and this plot, and they're both just kind of like fighting for which one is the main plot of the movie, and the movie can't decide. While the Ragnarok section is bookended, and then the Planet Hulk stuff is the middle. So it's almost like it's just kind of structured better. While X-Men 3,
Yeah.
it's fighting for it the entire movie, and it can't decide. So I'm gonna say devil's advocate. That is the reason why you don't hear people say that as much.
Okay, can I give you that's fair, and there's probably truth to that. But can I give you another superficial reason?
Yes.
Because with X-Men, people cared about
Yes.
the characters
That's another
that
thing.
they killed off in the third act, in the first act, and in Ragnarok, nobody but you and I gave a crap about the Warriors 3. That's
Not even
that's
that.
the difference.
Not even that, Cap. Nobody cared about Thor.
No, nobody cared about nobody cared about that entire franchise. That's the thing, is that people became Thor fans through Ragnarok, which I can't begin to relate to.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can relate to the fact that people couldn't relate to Thor,
Yeah,
and that I think
yeah.
he's good in his first movie, and then he's got nothing to do after that. Like
He's good in his first movie, which is a mediocre movie.
exactly, and then he gets nothing to do in either of the first two Avengers movies, and Dark World's not great, and he's like not one of the things that works in that
And so
movie.
people aren't minding a massive tone shift when you get to 3, because they didn't care about the tone you had in the first place. We were just reviewing this again.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're doing here. We got 5 minutes left on the clock.
Okay.
We got to finish up 17.
What else?
Let's
happened
at
in
least get through.
17?
Well, we got through I think the biggest, most interesting kind of phenomenon movies, where it's like Logan, huge phenomenon. I don't hear people talk about it anymore. Ragnarok, people have kind of reappraised because of Love and Thunder, and so that's going to have a different legacy than perhaps it would have had Love and Thunder never been made. I think that's an important thing to note.
Well,
And
it's
then,
like that with Wonder
and then
Woman.
Wonder Woman
Obviously, they're
had
different things.
Yeah, where Wonder Woman A 1984 happened, and B that franchise is done, and it will at some point get paved over.
Yeah, exactly. And then I have Guardians 2, which I love, is my favorite superhero film of that year, but there's not really much to say in terms of history, so
Yeah, I mean,
it exists.
it's the well, I mean, it's the middle film in a trilogy. It's not really affecting too much outside of itself, except that just that franchise is popular, so Ragnarok happened. I mean, like, Guardians itself certainly like creates Ragnarok, but as far as like the lasting impact of Guardians 2 itself, it has lasting impact for the world building and the cosmic stuff in the MCU, certainly.
To a degree, like, I don't know, I feel like whenever we do cosmic stuff outside of the gun movies, like, it feels very different. You know, like, you get stuff like the Celestials in Eternals, I don't think really fit with what they are in Guardians.
No, that's fair. I guess I just mean superficially, like, I don't know. We've continued doing cosmic things, and that's where that all started. I don't know, like,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some of the aesthetic, we keep like the jump points and stuff like that, which starts in 2.
yeah.
It's not the
Sorry,
first one.
that's where I was going. Is I like we are continuing with Guardian stuff into Infinity War, so that feels like Guardians 2.5 in the same way Avengers felt like Captain America 1.5.
When it's weird, and I think we talked about this when we did the commentaries for 1 and 2, but Infinity War almost exists in a world where 2 didn't happen.
How so?
Because so much of it's like reset. Um, like they don't have the Milano
Oh
anymore,
yeah, that's right.
and they do in that. Uh, he clearly gets rid of the rocket boots after the first movie, but he still has them in that movie. His mask gets destroyed in 2, and I think part of why it's not in 3 is just because his mask is destroyed. He doesn't have another one, but like it's back in that movie. Like there's so much in that movie where it's
Yeah, I
in
somehow didn't pick
Infinity
up on
War.
much of that, seeing that in the theater, but I
It's
had.
something that I didn't immediately. It was around when 3 came out where I was like, oh, Gunn is continuing from where he left off in 2, but now there's this weird place where,
Yeah.
there's stuff from 2 that doesn't carry over or ends with that movie that is then in Infinity War.
Well, and the Doctor Strange movies have had the same problem
Hmm.
where you've got I mean, it's different because it's different filmmakers, but you've got people like wanting to continue a franchise that is in the midst of a larger franchise. So it's like, here's things that first movie did that I want to deal with, but then he had to go off and be in other movies, and things had to happen to him. Why can't Doctor Strange have the stupid Eye of Agamotto? I don't know. I'll just give it to him. Who knows what it is?
Hmm. Yeah, who knows?
Okay, we've hit an hour. Let me read these other super chats real quick. Bag Studios, $1.99. Thor, LNT, Love and Thunder is Naked Science Man the entire runtime. What?
Like it's the stupid joke of the Naked Science Man, but
Oh,
it's just
okay, fair enough.
it's that tone.
I was
through
gonna
the
say,
whole movie.
like, I don't think he's even in that movie, is he? I don't even
Yeah,
remember.
yes, he has a cameo.
Does he? Okay. We saw that I saw that the one time.
I think I've seen that movie 1.5 times because I was at my mom's house and she was like, "Oh, there's a new Thor. Let's watch it." And halfway through, she turned it off and was like, "It's just me, or like, did they make that movie stupid?"
Oh yeah, you told me that story.
Yeah, and
Was
like
your
this is the
response
same
right,
woman that
like
was
the
like,
last
"Oh,
one?
yeah," and this is the same woman that was like, "Hey, there's a new Ant-Man movie on Disney Plus. We should watch it." And we watched all of Quantum Mania.
Bob the Hun, $5 super chat. Blockbusters had annoying comic relief and or bad one-liners. Thor 3 is the first time I felt I was watching bloopers they kept in by accident. More like in my mind, more like bloopers they kept in on purpose because they were self-indulgent.
It's to the point where I'm shocked they didn't keep the Yondu blooper in the movie. Like it's that far in how much of a farce it is.
Yeah, and unabashedly, and like not in a good way.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
at the very least, that can't be the place where you destroy Asgard.
Hmm.
Dan
No one cared, Cap.
Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. Ragnarok felt like a robot chicken or Smosh parody. A lot of blockbusters had lame humor, but not like this. This is something uniquely bad. Yeah, and again, too influential.
Hmm.
My big takeaway from this conversation is that Ragnarok ruined everything, and Logan didn't help us in any way except giving us one pretty good movie. Like that's really irritating. And probably Patrick Stewart's best performance in any of those movies.
Hey, yeah, 100%. He's really good in that movie. Yeah, Logan gave us Joker, and Ragnarok gave us Phase 4. Thank
And
you.
like Joker's fine, but that's kind of a sad consolation prize. Like you got this really derivative movie.
It's almost like a facsimile of a movie, where it's like, look at these movies that happened in the 70s.
Yeah, like it made me feel, and we'll get to Joker, I guess, but like it made me feel, like I wanted to stay ignorant because I had not seen either of the movies that it was really derivative of, and so for my first viewing of that, I was like, I didn't know what any of the hallmarks were. Now I did feel like, in a way, I could kind of tell that it had to be borrowing from a lot of stuff because like its tone was just too specifically like 70s and stuff. Where I was like, I don't know if this makes any sense. You ever watch a thing where you're like, this feels like it's referencing something?
Yeah,
Like I had that with
absolutely.
Joker even before I heard anybody say what it was referencing. Where I was like, and also I had heard they wanted Scorsese to make it and he wouldn't make it.
Yeah, and he was a producer, like was talked about as a producer, and then I think when that movie came out, his name's not on it.
I thought
If I
his name
remember,
was still on it. Maybe it's
it
not.
it might still be on it, but maybe I'm just thinking of the director thing, and I've kind of gaslit myself into thinking he's
Yeah.
just not on it at all anymore.
But then I made the mistake of going ahead and watching King of Comedy, and I was like, wow, it's even more the same movie than I thought it was. I mean, like not exactly the same movie, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like there's kind of whole scenes lifted, and like the look of it is too similar. I started Taxi Driver at some point, and I haven't finished it. Just something came up, and I haven't finished it. But
And
I don't
King
know.
of Comedy is such a great movie
It's
too.
it's amazing. Yeah, no, it's a wonderful film, and it made me go like. I had this catch-22 where I was like, God, I kind of wish I'd stayed ignorant because I would like this movie better. And then I'm like, but then these other movies are still better movies, so no. Like you do want to watch those movies.
Yeah. Yeah, and a big thing I had was when the trailer came out, I was like, oh, that looks like Oscar bait the Joker movie. And then I watched it and I was like, yeah, this is the movie they sold.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the worst movie ever, but I don't think it's especially interesting.
Well, it'll be fun to do the rewind commentary with you on that. Chewbacca's Lover, $10 super chat again. Appreciate you, man. Thanks a lot. He says, do you agree with what Eric said about Endgame, that it didn't earn being self-indulgent, that bad storytelling is bad storytelling, and the success of the MCU doesn't make it any less cringy?
Agreed. But I mean, it also depends on what we're talking about. But there's definitely a
Yeah.
lot of that. In
I
that
don't
movie.
think that movie is wholesale bad storytelling. Like I honestly am not in the camp that feels like the time travel thing was just too much of an excuse to go back and like see old scenes we'd been there for. Like like there's definitely some of that. It didn't turn me off like it did with some other people, and I thought they were more creative about it than I thought they would be.
I think it helps that we're never really like in scenes that we watched, in those other movies, with a few exceptions. Like you're in the Star-Lord dance scene for like half a second.
Yeah, and that was one of the more clever ones, I thought. Like I thought that was a fun thing to do, where you go back to the intro of that movie.
Yeah, it's very confusing in that it it has that beginning part, but I guess the rest of the intro of that movie doesn't happen, where the bad guys show up.
I had the same thing. I was like, where are they? Yeah.
So like that's kind of confused, but like
No, I liked
we
the
go,
gag, but then they needed to have some follow through. Absolutely.
but like you have the the opening, or not the opening. You go to the Avengers alien fight. Sorry, you can tell it's getting late.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. We go to the alien fight, and we never really go back to any of those moments. Like when we finally are entering those scenes, it's like right at the end of where we cut off in that movie. So it's not like, Iron Man's running around and like Iron Man's flying through the whale or whatever. Uh, it's not like we're reliving all of that stuff. But I also have never been a big fan of them going time travel. And the way we get there is really lazy.
Yeah. And I've talked about this before, but my bigger issue is just the inconsistency of their time travel and how not well thought out and well explained it is. But
I think it's really just the ending that doesn't fit.
yeah, same, yeah. But that is a big problem. They can't stick the landing with it. But I do appreciate that they didn't contrive some way to go back to like all the most popular moments and just have kind of a clip reel. I like
They're stuck with Dark World. Like Dark
Yeah.
World's one of the places we have to go to.
Yeah, and they know people don't like that movie, so I mean, like that's a risk I kind of appreciate because as much as I couldn't get excited about having to go back to that movie, they at least pick stuff based on where the stones were, so like they're in the narrative, like they're
Yeah.
it's story driven. They're keeping track of their own continuity well enough, I guess. With that,
Well, my thing with
anyway.
Endgame is I think Endgame's very sloppy, but there's moments that I really like, and like there's certain characters they stick the landing on, and others they don't. Like even like in the Dark World stuff, so like everything with Thor sucks, as we all know. I think the scene with his mom's pretty good, uh, but I also really like the scene where Rocket yells at him as like a payoff from the first movie where he's yelling about how we all have dead people, so that's no excuse to get other people killed along the way. And he's got his speech about how like he has his dead people that he has to bring back in Infinity War. But there's just moments like that where I'm like, oh, okay, this is a good character moment. Nebula is like the only consistent character through the MCU. She's great.
But yeah, I guess he wanted us to focus more on that idea of whether or not they earned the self-indulgent thing. There's a you're starting with an assumption, which is that it's all self-indulgent. Again, I think pieces of it are and pieces of it aren't. So like, I have in the past said that they earned some of what they did in that movie, in that they've got this rich history and world that they can mine, and that I don't know if you agree with this, Austin, but I just feel like to a particular degree, and you can go too far, and I think there are a couple scenes in that movie where they did, like they're laying on some things too thick, particularly in my mind with the conversation with Tony Stark and his dad. Like that's a place where it went way too far for me. But yeah, I think because he's saying like it's maybe not they maybe don't earn all of that through success, and it you need to have to still have good stories. Like yes, obviously.
Well, I guess a big one is the Tony Stark death, which I don't know. I don't know if that's what you would call self-indulgent, but like none of that plays with any of the rules they set up. Like I don't think that works at all. It's like that is a place where I think they're doing bad storytelling to get to a place that they want to and to have a moment they want. And like I don't think that works.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling. I feel like as long as you can tell your story, naturally enough, I do think they earned a little bit of like a reunion nature with that movie. I don't have a problem with that. That they made like a little bit of a reunion. I don't think that's bad.
Yeah, like I said, it depends what it is. But like as the culmination of everything they were doing, there's certain things that you're kind of gonna get there naturally.
Robert, I don't have many major issues with Endgame outside of the jokes. Well, we will eventually get to a commentary with that, and
Do we have to do Infinity War and Endgame together?
I'm not doing that. That's just too long. We're gonna have too much to say. You'll watch our heads explode on camera.
Or it'll just be like, here's another comedic scene. Thor's picking his belly button.
You guys appreciate all the super chats and interaction tonight. Austin, any final thoughts about 2017? Any of the movies that we talked about before we move on? We might hit a little bit more 17 at the beginning of the next one. We didn't talk about Power Rangers or anything, but
Well, Power Rangers is a movie that exists and then was wiped away.
yeah, the big. I guess I'll just say this real quick about that because I've said my piece on that movie 100,000 times, and I've got commentary and reviews and everything. But I mean, I have that
And
for a
it's
lot
so
of this
like
stuff.
far, like it released too late, so like it wasn't really impacting anything.
Well, the big question that I've always had with that is, was there ever potential in Power Rangers for a general audience to be at anything close to the level of popularity with Marvel or DC to warrant the kind of money they were spending on it? Like if that movie had been great and had been kind of awkward and felt like it had missing scenes and just made a lot of like really really odd choices and was missing a lot of mythology, if it didn't have any of those problems and it appeased Power Ranger fans, would it have still been successful enough to continue a franchise? I don't know.
Probably not.
I kind of don't think so.
Whenever I think of that movie, I just think of I forget which movie. I think it was Guardians too, because there's like a period where for my dad's birthday every year, we're going to like an MCU movie, starting with Civil War, and his birthday's in May. So I think it was Guardians 2. We saw that, and there was a Power Rangers trailer for it, and it's that one where like the only Power Rangers thing you get is at the end where he's like starts to morph.
Yeah.
And my sister's sitting there like, "Whoa, this movie looks really cool. What is? Oh, it's Power Rangers."
Yeah, you told me that story. What's sad is we didn't know that was going to be indicative of that whole movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like that trailer was actually marketing that movie authentically, which is you sit around the whole movie waiting for them to morph, and then the Power Ranger stuff at the end is boring.
That's a movie I watched. I was like, this is fine.
It doesn't hold up on repeat viewings, I'll tell you that. Because I liked it okay in the theater. I was frustrated with stuff about it. And it gets worse and worse every time I see it.
Mm-hmm.
That's rough. That's a movie I've had to see more times than I wanted to. And it was also salvageable. If they could have made sequels and they
that's why I
pivoted
think
right,
it's fine.
it was
Like
salvageable.
a lot of the plot and stuff's not great, and like there's a lot of, like you said, missing scenes or whatever.
It's got a
Like
good cast.
is all really good.
They're really good.
That is what upgrades it to being just fine. Where you're like, I like these characters well enough.
You want to see them again.
Yeah.
It gave them some dimension. I mean, it did the one thing a movie really needs to do with Power Rangers from that show is just make them not one-dimensional and give them more than a singular prevailing character trait. I mean, some of the choices made with them did feel like a random D20 roll, but I liked them all. The only problem is it also wasn't interested in the fun hokey Power Ranger stuff, and you have to have that too, even if you're going to make it smarter.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not a good toy commercial, it's not good Power Rangers. It doesn't matter if it's if the characters are well written.
Well, I guess that's another movie that kind of comes a little bit too early. Kind of like what I said with Venom, where like maybe
it's too late and too early.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, it's too late for what it's doing, but like it's maybe a little bit too early to be more of like a Guardians 2, like kind of embracing the hokiness.
Yeah, because it just wanted to be a Chronicle sequel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just looked like Fantastic, but it's also a better movie than that is.
They needed to, yeah, but that's also not hard.
No. I've been stabbed, and it's been nicer than Fantastic.
I'll just, since you told an anecdote about that movie, I'll do that too real quick before we leave. I was a few months ago, I was playing the Power Rangers deck builder with my son Freddie and I think Jason and my wife. And there's a mechanic in that game where you fill up things on your character card and then you can morph. So you start as a teenager and then you can morph, which is cool. And Freddy just could not get the cards he needed, and he just could not morph. And it took him 45 minutes in the game before he was finally able to morph. And I made a post on the Renegade Power Rangers Facebook group, and I was like, Freddy just pulled a Power Rangers 2017, and it took him 45 minutes to morph.
I don't know why. I think it's because my brain's broken at this point. But when you were like, I have an anecdote, all I could think of was that X-Men Days of Future Past JFK thing, but it went to Power Rangers, and all I could imagine was what would JFK look like if he were a Power Ranger, and his morph would be like
politics.
That's exactly what I was thinking, but then I was like, okay, but what would that look like? And it's just he takes the Pledge of Allegiance, like he's standing there and he's like, say it's morphin time. Apologies, I can't do Kennedy, but
or just every ranger has to say like something from the Declaration of Independence.
Like, well, now I'm just thinking, like, what would it be like if you
we the people, and then they morph.
Just like a full team of presidents, like your Blue Ranger,
President Rangers,
and he's like, "Oh, read us back."
Yeah, what do the President Zords look like?
One of them's an eagle. If Abraham Lincoln,
that's true,
is one of these Rangers, he's
just got a big chair.
No, it could be a chair. I was gonna say his is just a big top hat. But a chair would also work.
We need to design this Megazord. Anyway, this has gone very, very far
completely off the rails. I'm sorry, my brain hit that moment where it's like, okay, we're done.
I watched it explode. I could see it happening in real time. Anyway, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Sure appreciate you. Thanks to our patrons as always, and especially our Superhero Rewind producers. I'm just pulling the names up here because I thought I had them. And I gotta do one or two more clicks here. One of the perks that you get if you join the $10 tier is you get your name read at the end of each Rewind commentary or unscripted video. And I'm gonna do that eventually. Thanks a lot to Chewbacca's lover, Dr. Hello, Goofster123, Jeff Niederhofer, Joe Turner, Jajira, John Matthew McLean, MattBat68, Michael Martin, Michael McAllister, Stone Gasman, Super Billy, Thomas Edgehill, Tim Drake, Adam March, Damon Begay, Hot Soup, Jacob Schneider, Jonathan Campbell, Kareem Roberts, Matthew Brody, Michael Austin Gulick, this guy, The Day Ghost, Unknown Passenger, and Wendell Jones. And we will see you again in a couple of weeks for another one of these. And we're going to be bringing back the Rewind commentaries starting next week, next Friday, if all goes according to plan. We're going to try to do both Ultimate Avengers animated movies together. So look forward to that. That's the plan right now.
Should we announce what we're doing this Friday or not?
Yeah, go ahead. It's not related to Rewind, but it is a commentary.
Yeah, we did a vote, and it looked like it was going to be Terminator Salvation for a while, but we are doing Pirates 3 finally.
Finally, it's been a long time.
Oh, that's right. As Nixon would say. His famous catchphrase.
Yeah, we did a Patreon vote for that, and you also can get access to that with the I'm sorry, I'm losing it too. It's getting late.
Through Patreon.
With
The
with
Patreon vote through
well,
Patreon.
well, what I was gonna say is through the producer tier. But I'm hesitating because I'm trying to remember if I also included that in the $5. I think that might also be there too.
Yeah, I want to say for the Friday shows we normally do it in the $5. But basically, what Cap is saying is
I might have included that actually just with all the Patreon this time. I think
Oh.
even the $2 may have had it. I can't remember.
I don't know. But basically, what Cap is saying is, give us money.
That's not what I'm saying. But I appreciate you guys who support the channel, and we're gonna get going. Appreciate you. I was Captain Logan. This was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, folks.